Good.
Coming up.
All right, good afternoon. This is the regular meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections. Date is April 11th. The time is 4:37 p.m. We're at 120 West Doherty Street in Athens, Georgia. First item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. Chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I so move.
Okay, motion, Ms. Fambro, do we have a second?
Is the state right? Which one?
These are the minutes.
Yeah. It's the AST.
So we have a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Shirley, all those in favor of adopting the agenda, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, agenda is adopted. Next item on the agenda are the approval of minutes. We have 3 minutes before us to approve, 3 sets of minutes. March 14, that was a regular meeting. March 21 was a special meeting. April 4th was a special meeting. If members would review those. After reviewing, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt those as a set unless we need to pull one apart. There is a date error, actually on the third one.
April
The
5th.
agenda says April 4th, but the minutes say April 5th. Which
It was April
is,
the 5th one.
Did we
Right.
change it to April 5th?
We did. It's April 5th.
okay. So the minutes are correct.
The minutes are correct.
Okay. So,
I move that we adopt all the minutes.
okay. Wait a second. One second, Ms. Till, we'll do discussion because I think there's a change.
Mr. Chair, I have the list of people in attendance on the April the 5th minutes. Our well-intentioned but misguided secretary may have forgotten to fill in some of the positions for some of the persons. It's a small thing, but to clarify, like the position, for example, I have Audra Taylor as elections assistant, but Renee Russo, what is Renee's title? Clerk. And then I know that also in attendance last time, James was in attendance. What's James' last name?
Howard.
Okay, and then what's their title? Clerk. And then there was. Who else?
The nasty Bartholomew.
Bartholomew,
Thank you. And what's their title?
election clerk.
Awesome. Mr. Chair, if I would move to amend the motion to include language about amending the minutes to reflect those names that I just got clarification on, those 3 people for attendance.
Okay. Do you accept the amendment?
I accept.
Okay, and make the second. Still,
Phil.
were you good? All right, all those in favor? Say aye.
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 Okay, unanimous, minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. There are a few people here. If you've not signed up, please step forward and sign up. I have one person, and that is Emily Krim. Okay, you'll have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when your time begins. Just a moment. All right, go ahead.
Thank you for having me. I would like to ask the board to consider moving the polling site currently at Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary School to another location. Having OAS as a polling location on school days creates risk as well as issues of accommodations and service provision for both children and school staff as well as voters. Voting currently takes place in the school's gym. To access this location, voters have one entry point to access and park in the lot that is utilized by staff, parents, and school buses, or voters must walk down the hill from the public bus stop situated on Oglethorpe Avenue. This specific parking lot has only 3 handicap designated spots, 2 of which are typically used by staff on school days. In addition, OAS has one of the largest elementary populations in Athens and houses the majority of students in adapted curriculum for the West Side. So some of the children our school serves are ones that are considered medically fragile and have more intensive needs. Statistically, voters are more likely to vote on their way to or from work, so oftentimes polling locations are busier in the morning and evening. With voting beginning at 7 a.m., the morning rush perfectly aligns with when children and staff are entering the school. With bus and parent drop-offs, as well as voter traffic, this creates an opportunity for more accidents, as well as creates a hindrance to the public trying to vote. Voting within the gym during the school day directly impacts the academic schedule and service provision for the children attending. K to fifth grade students have PE 1 day per week. So this past year, children who typically have PE on Tuesdays have missed 3 separate days already this school year, or almost 10% of their PE days. Teachers make accommodations as best they can, but depending on space restraints, the weather, et cetera, the same curriculum is simply not always able to be implemented. In addition, some children with special needs have an adaptive PE schedule that is implemented on Tuesday and Thursdays. Dependent on the physical needs of the children receiving these specific services, it can be even more difficult to provide them an appropriate alternative, so services are instead often canceled completely. Outside of the academic programming for children, the gym is also used for other activities such as the after-school program, housing for car riders for dismissal in the afternoon, and certain special events. These routines and procedures are altered and create disruption for children that need structure and reliability. Schools are built, of course, with specific spaces and amenities in mind because they are needed. From a safety standpoint, of course, we simply shouldn't be allowing people in the building that don't absolutely need to be in the building. We know too well that we're exposing our children to additional risk by letting people stream into our school building. To walk into a large room that is manned by a small group of volunteers that are not trained nor tasked with having to deal with a security crisis. Our gym connects to the rest of the building. So if you allow someone in the gym, they have access to every other part of that school. And it's simply too easy for another horrible event to take place. A location such as Forest Heights Baptist Church, located across the street from OAS, would potentially serve as a much more ideal location. Moving to this location would still allow the same bus line access for voters, but would prove to be more well-suited as it has three times as many handicap accessible parking spaces, many of which are set up actually against the building, so voters would have better accessibility and less distance to cover. There are 2 entry points to the parking lot at this church as well. The church holds no recurring events or activities on Tuesdays, so this location allows for little to no disruption to shared spaces or events, and because it's directly across from OAS, it allows for an easy adaptation for voters moving from their previous polling site from the school. Thank you for your time and consideration in creating a safer and more conducive voting site for both the OAS community as well as the Athens voting community.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? You'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead and just fill this out after. We'll be fine. Let me start the timer.
Good afternoon. My name is Brittany Lowe.
Hold on. 1 second. Start the timer. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Brittany Lopez, and I'm a civic engagement coordinator for Lead Athens, as well as a current poll worker with the Multimodal 4A. My comment is no longer as extensive as hers, but I just came here for support. I understand that later on, Mr. Adam Shirley will be mentioning how our county wants to propose language access for Spanish. And I was coming here to provide support from Lead Athens and how we can do this. By federal law, if the voter population speaks another language and is more than 5%, then it is required to provide a ballot in their language, and this can be seen in Gwinnett County. I understand that our county wants to adopt DeKalb's County's and Liberty's County's voluntary sample ballot in Spanish, and I just wanted to offer my support in how we can make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else wishing to make public comment? If you could just fill that out, please. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the director's report, and the director has the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So you have in your packet the copy of the activity report that shows that we have a total of we have a total of 21 cancellations, of which 14 moved out of state and 7 deceased. We don't show any building removals at this moment. Of course, we're still getting acclimated with the new voter registration system, and there are some reports that's just not available yet. So hopefully by next month, we will have all of the data, but so far, this is what we have as far as cancellations. Regarding our total registered voters, we have a grand total of 83,257 who are eligible voters. And 12,752 of those are inactive. And then 70,505 are, 12,752 are inactive. And then 70,505 of those voters are active. We have issued 36 voter IDs. And I think that number should be different because year-to-date number was 102 last month. So we'll update that at your next meeting. There were not any absentee ballots issued, I thought. Maybe so. Okay, so we had 18 absentee ballots that were mailed and 16 that were returned. And that was part of the March 21st special election. So I have that. And then I wanted to provide you something that I thought I had completed until I tried to search for it and share it with Pam in the office and realized I hadn't finished it. And I meant to provide this to you guys before you had your first work session. So what you have is what I made a polling locations precinct study. In it is, of course, our contact information and your contact information and the times, actually your terms. Next is the timeline that I created for you that gives us a point of beginning to end and how the new locations will be implemented. Then there are opinion notes of the Attorney General of the implementation of voting precinct boundary changes. And then the code sections from Title 21, which is 260, 261, 261.1, 262, 265, and 266, just to give us a little direction from the official code of Georgia annotated. And then lastly, you have a list of the current polling locations and their addresses. And then something that I wanted to point out is the total number of active voters by district combo. And I want you to kind of focus on when you're making your changes, if you would focus on Winterville 1A, District Combo 306. If there's some kind of way that we can, let's see, is it 306? No, I don't think it's gonna work. I don't see 306 on here anymore, but there's a reason why it's 306, and I've got to figure that out. If we can figure out some kind of way to put those 3 voters in another combo, that's gonna eliminate a combo. That makes sense. Let's see, I don't see 306 on here anymore. So I'll look at that a little more in depth and see if, and I'll have it for you at the next meeting. But that was one of the small things I wanted us to kind of pay attention to.
Is GIS aware of that one?
They are. Well, that's a good question. I don't think they are aware of it based on the numbers that I gave, but they can probably see that there's a small portion of the map that's, that makes a difference in the 1A precinct. You also have, let's see. So your session next Tuesday, April 18th at 3 p.m., I will have that information for you. And if it's some kind of way, I'll have some kind of recommendation on what I can see would be a easy fix. Let's see. Legislative update. So Nathan is down as one of, to give you that update, but I'm gonna go ahead and give that to you based on I found. And did I forget to pull it off my printer? I did. No, here we go. All right. So Senate Bill 129, these are the bills that actually passed in the General Assembly. Senate Bill 129, it amends Title 21, Section 2, 106, 381, 404, 421, and 498. And it allows employees to give them time off of work to vote during advanced voting. We already know that voters get time off to vote on election day, but this allows for advanced voting. And it changed the reporting to the Secretary of State's deadline to 11:59 PM versus 10, where we sent in our total number of ballots that were cast. It adjusts the language of third-party absentee ballot application notices to enforce that it's not coming from a government entity. And distinguishes that it is not a ballot. So there's no confusion when a voter applies for an absentee ballot. And it adjusts the language regarding performance review boards through the state election board. Then there's Senate Bill 222. It adds a new code section in Title 21, Section 2, and it becomes Title 21-218. And this requires all elections administration funding must be from federal and state funds, otherwise assigned by the Secretary of State or State Election Board. And then counties can no longer apply for grants on our behalf. It introduces $10,000 fine and felony charge with jail time, minimum of 1 year for violation. This makes the State Election Board its own line item in the budget and makes a position for the executive director for the State Election Board. And then lastly, House Bill 572, it doesn't really specifically deal with elections, but it does deal with one of the responsibilities that we have as filing officers. So it's going to revise 21-5-6, and it renames the Georgia Government Transparency and Campaign Finance Commission back to what we're most familiar with as the State Elections Commission. And it includes provisions where it penalizes us election officials for not timely posting the ethics forms, and it imposes a civil penalty for those forms not being filed electronically or faxed Pam no later than 30 days after the end of the grace period. And Pam's responsible for that. That's why I kind of highlighted her name. But that's the update on that. And then Audra's going to let you know how many open records requests we have. And then after that, if you have any comments, just let me know.
Good afternoon. For the month of March 2023, we processed a total of 11 open records requests.
Comments, questions for the staff? It's not related to an agenda item later in the agenda.
I want to say I really appreciate the legislative update that y'all put together. It was great getting an update on this last month, and it's great to have around it. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Questions for staff? Okay, we will move on. The next item on the agenda under old business is number 1, which is resolution for advanced voting schedule template. Mr. Kadir. Chair recognizes Mr. Kadir. I'm going to set a timer too, so we can stay on track here.
I believe the board has received my proposal. If you all have any comments, we can add to amend to it anyway. Anything particular you all don't like as a group in terms of hours and locations, we can do that. Otherwise, I'll make a motion that we utilize this as a guide, not as necessarily something that has to be enforced at every single runoff. And in summary, what it basically is this first week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, only the Board of Election office will be open 9 through 4. Pretty much same as the for the second week. Matter of fact, exactly the same for the second week. Third week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 9 to 5 at the Board of Election office. On Wednesdays, 7 to 7. So that gives us a little extra hours, a few extra hours. And on election day, for the runoff locations, the 3 most popular polling stations have been the library, the Cooperative Extension Center, and Tennis Center. I looked at the map, they kind of pretty much spread out. So, because of now that we have a lot of folks participating in through absentee ballots, I think these 3 would be sufficient. If not, we can consider adding Board of Election or the Linden House. And as you all noticed on my notes, Linden House has one minor issue. One of the property owner insists on putting up the election signs. So I don't know how serious that is. I think it's a great location. So I would be in support of that. So I'll await any comments, feedback that y'all might have, anything I would like to change.
Yeah,
You said the tennis center, the library, and where else?
cooperative, I got it right here.
Okay.
This is
cooperative
what he
extension.
said.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So
Mike?
can I make a comment
Yeah,
first?
yeah.
I just would like you to clarify what you mean by election day locations, because we can't, I mean, unless we make a change to our election day polling locations, those two of them are already polling locations, and one of them could potentially be in the future. So I'm not quite sure what you meant by that.
I thought for runoffs, we don't have to open all the centers. Is that correct?
No, we do.
Oh, we do,
Everything has to be open.
even for the runoff.
Election day.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
That's a major
It's
mistake.
only early voting that is,
That is that.
kind of tamped down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, then let me revise this, because what I'd like to add on that third week are those three particular locations. And then, of course, for the election day, we would not be doing.
Thank you. The chair is going to recognize Ms. Fambro, and then the two of you, if you wish to go ahead.
Yeah. I kind of have a problem like that because you have left out a segment of people in Athens-Clarke County. You don't have anything on the east side. And I think that Miriam Moore, I'm really thinking about recommending Miriam Moore for a permanent site. And I think that to take that away will be doing an injustice to that particular community in East Athens. We've had, that community has so much taken from them that I just don't see me, unless we, my vote would be for, particularly for that, probably be number one in order to serve everybody equitably, would be on my list. It would be at the top of my list.
So do you feel, I guess you don't feel that the tennis center substitutes for the east side for Miriam?
The tennis center is past Walmart.
Yeah,
So in East Athens, I don't know how many miles East Athens is from the central places in East Athens, but for me, it's too far.
And I think there's often confusion between East Athens and East Side,
east side.
two different places.
Yeah, because East Athens is huge, but the east side is another reference, totally different.
Now, has everyone had a chance to look at the past 2 or 3 turnout numbers for all of them, including Miriam Moore? I did. And I just went by where people are showing up. Like, if for reasons you say and majority of the board feels that way, then we can add Miriam Moore or substitute. But the turnout there is just relatively very low compared to the other places, but that's my view.
Mr. Shirley, the chair
Thank you.
recognizes.
So I'm a visual person, and so I wanted to be sure, I put this together, and the proposed new hours is, please catch me if I've mischaracterized what you suggested. What I've done is I've taken and listed the locations, and I've run the November 22 hours along the left side, week 1, the days, and then week 3. I have the locations, and then I have the proposed new hours, and then the change summarized on the right. If I'm wrong, please tell me. I wanted to be sure. I tried to take what you had suggested, Hank, and that's going to be that column next to the red. Here, aha, I came from food day. Aha, yes. Is this what you had, what you were suggesting?
Yeah, proposed new hours.
By keeping downtown, right? That was what you suggested
Yeah,
only for week 1 and 2,
right.
right? Okay.
To,
And then so week 3,
First of all, the law says it has to go till 5, so, oh no, that's Saturday. Never mind.
yeah, that's
Okay.
Saturday. right.
so before I dig into this and give opinions, I want to be sure that I'm representing you correctly. Is this?
But you have all the additional centers also open on second week, or it's just that Saturday?
They were not?
He has.
Okay,
listed
so I made a mistake. All
none.
right, so this is my fault. That's not, so this is the stuff you're suggesting, right? So you're saying no change from what we really did in November is what we would do, except for
Right.
Sunday being gone. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay, okay, got it. So for the first 2
And
weeks, I see that
also,
now.
we do Wednesday, later
that's-
Wednesday.
On
Is that
the-
only in the
That's
third
week
week?
3, right?
On the third week.
That's what the.
Right, so,
Yes.
so the first 2 weeks, got it. I made a mistake here, understood. So no
Okay.
giant changes except for
Right.
Sunday. Got it. If you wouldn't mind, Lisa, scrolling down to the third week.
And on that one, I have,
So Monday, did I hear you right that Monday you're suggesting only downtown open on Monday? Week 3?
well, I did make a mistake. I thought only for the runoffs. Somewhere I had the idea that we could choose a location, but we have to keep all of them open. Then I would like to keep more than just the Board of Election open in week 3.
Gotcha.
Just those three other ones I picked out, but Ms. Fambro feels, Miriam Moore, I just looked at the numbers for those others, the Winterville and the problems with the others. And I could not justify it, but if you all feel as a group, you can justify it, then obviously we'll add it and
So
we'll vote ahead.
I do want to pause a second and zoom out for a second. I'm so thankful we're talking about this now and not like a month before an election. Doesn't it
Yes.
change the whole complexion of the discussion? When
Exactly.
we're thinking, maybe, right? So I love what
That
we're
was the
doing,
whole
right? I love this idea.
reason
I'm
we're
glad we're doing it now versus September of 2024.
Yes.
So if this is, I hear what you're saying about not wanting to squander resources that are limited. I'm skeptical about reducing the number of locations. And again, I made some mistakes with this. It turns out clerically, so please don't attribute the mistakes to Hank. Just, I don't know. I would like to add some places back in, at least the third week, to make it more like what we had. I didn't think it was broken, the advanced voting we had in November for the general, but that's just me.
But you do realize that was for, I think, a little high-profile election. But if you look at the runoff for the general primaries for like May, I thought it was very low turnout. But that's why I suggested this just be used as a guideline. And then if there is a high-profile or what the board feels is going to be a lot more active, then maybe we should have a second tactic much closer to what we had last time. But to have this open for a general primary runoff in May, I just think it's wasting resources. But if the staff has any comment, I'd like to hear it after the board has.
The board still has support.
I'm good, thank you.
You're good.
For now, that's my
Okay.
comments.
Ms. Dillon, do you wish to speak now?
Well, it seems to me, I haven't put as much thought into the numbers as y'all have. I've looked at it. And from what I'm hearing, it just seems like we need to discuss more.
Okay.
Was that all you had to say?
No.
Yeah, we don't have to
I'll go.
vote on this today. So what, if y'all will send me the feedback, I'm happy to incorporate it. I really believe the board decides as a whole. And if the majority
Thank you
does
for your
feel
work.
that there should be more,
Appreciate it.
we can do that. Absolutely.
I have a couple comments to Ms. Fambro, and then we can move forward from there. I do recall during this conversation, when we've had it at rush times, there were a few times in which the room was full of public commenters requesting and asking, and oftentimes begging for us to stay open until 7 p.m. during early voting. And I think that should continue to be the standard. I do not, and I will vote no if there is any portion of this that is a reduction from what we had in November. That's how I feel we should be adding to, not taking away. There are laws passed that attempt to take away other pieces of folks' access to cast their vote. And I think that this is one of the last tools we have left are those hours. Until that is changed, I intend to do everything I can to make those hours.
May I make a response to
Hold on.
something you said? Okay.
I have the floor right now. And so I see this job as expanding access, expanding opportunity to vote. So under no circumstances do I wish to close or change any of these. I know that there is a concern from you on terms of public dollars being spent on these, but if one voter shows up, that's good enough for me. One person, one vote. And I'll leave it at that.
So that person does have an option to go to other places, but I hear you.
That person may not have a vehicle,
Yeah.
that person has circumstances which are none of my business and nothing that I need to provide the opportunity, and that's where it is.
Well, I'll just make a comment to the fact that you said we had people coming in and asking things. I remember we had a full library was full of people who wanted that special election in for District 2. And the only people who really showed up to vote on that election later on were seems like a few more than the people who show up. So I am not going to be persuaded by a few handful of people who come in because they do not speak for the majority at large. But I respect the board and I will go along.
I was
That's
not
what I
referencing
support,
that
we'll do
particular meeting, but the chair recognizes Ms. Fambro.
Director Sosby, how long has the Miriam Moore Center been open for early voting? Do you all remember? I think it only happened maybe 2019 or 2020.
2020.
So that would be something else that I would point out. Most of these places have been open for years. At least give this place time for expansion and people to get used to coming to that polling place. And I do not think that, 3, 4, 5 years, 4 years at most, I think, is good enough to have made a decision of this nature about, not having it. I think that we should give them time to grow, because when we had the general election, they had over 500 people to show up at the polling places, because people are now understanding that, hey, when I get off of work, I can just jump off of Loop 10 and go to Miriam Moore. Aside from hitting the people in that area, other people are using that polling place too.
That's where I always go vote.
Okay. Give me another shot to add to the suggestions you all made. Send me your feedback. Ms. Still, you said you'd like further discussion, and I will incorporate and bring it up to the next meeting. We still have some time.
Mr. Secretary, can we make sure that is on the May agenda?
I'll make sure. Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to move on with the agenda then. The next item on the agenda, we had a timer. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to kind of maybe shed a little light and try to steer you in a direction of just making a recommendation that there be a template for general elections, general primaries, and then a different template for runoffs and specials.
Right. And I
Because we do know
we
that
had discussed
Yes.
that.
yeah,
That's what-
we know that there are low turnouts, and I'm going to fend for staff, and I'm going to fend for budget. Because when we're looking at our budgets, we're looking at where money needs to be spent. Okay. So I'm going to advocate for my staff and the fact that there are low turnouts, and I think it's necessary to cut back where we see to cut back, because we're always told that in our budgets to, skim where we can, but we don't want to take away from people's rights to vote, right?
Yeah.
So we want to still encourage people to vote, but to also realize that there is still opportunities. When we are disenfranchised, when people say they're disenfranchised, they disenfranchise themselves. And I'm saying this because I'm a voter too. I have to decide that I want to vote. And before advanced voting even came about, we only had one day to vote. That was on election day. And people voted. Now, when I've spoken this in public meetings, and I've said, y'all got to prove this to me. And we got some good turnouts. And so I'm real proud of the voters of Athens-Clarke County. Can we grow more? Yes, of course we can. And we're going to do everything we can this year and next year to drive people to go to the polls and to use the time that they have, but also use the time that we have. We got to get people accustomed to this is what it's going to be, because what's going to happen when the General Assembly forms again and take away days of voting, and we have no control over it. So we got to get people used to this is how it is. You can go 21, 24 days. Don't wait till the last minute. Get to the polls. And if you can't get to the polls during those days, you have all day on election day. And there's other options. You can vote absentee. You can vote on Saturday. And we're open on Sunday. Some counties aren't doing that. And so I want our voters to be responsible voters, just like we are responsible election administrators. And we're responsible for a budget, and we want to be good stewards of that budget. And so I want y'all to keep that in mind, because the commissioners are gonna ask me questions like that. You know, shouldn't you skim back on some of the locations? Well, yeah, but board wants this. You know, so I want y'all to keep that in mind when you're making your templates, to just not just think about the voters, but think about us. We've got to be there for those voters. And if we're using all of our days advanced voting, just sitting in la land, how productive am I gonna be on election day after I've been sitting twiddling my thumbs and no voters showed up? That was tiring, that special election.
Yeah.
And we had workers at 3 locations, an average of 5 people. I mean, look at that. And then the fact that only 5 voters show up. And 5 voters at each location could have came to one place, our office, and they'll do it. They've proven it. They took drop boxes out, and guess what? Folks still got their absentee ballots into the office. So our voters are proving that regardless of what passes in the legislature, they're gonna vote. They're proving it every day. And so I want to bring that to our forefront. And I hope you will consider that.
And thank you
Consider
for
staff.
saying that, because I feel like they're sometimes making a mockery of talking about democracy, but not participating in it.
Right.
And then it's blamed on not enough places open, not enough hours, all of these excuses to look good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is a continuing discussion about changes to voter precincts for the 2024 elections. And Mr. Shirley, before I recognize you, question. Is this just some follow-ups on a few questions we had at the work session?
I was planning just to check in. I had one thing of my own to check in about, but generally it was just to stop and say, hey, what's up? What have we
Okay.
thought since
So I'll
last week?
start the 10-minute timer, and Chair recognizes you.
Hey, so I wanted just to check in with everybody. I had emailed the board about just with a thrown together illustration of what I had in mind, and the responses that I did see were favorable. Would we like to, I didn't want to speak just as one person because there's limited resources in GIO. Is that something we'd like to see them bring to next Tuesday if they could? For the benefit of those listening, I wanted just to explore the possibility of, instead of having to carve precincts out of commission districts and then find a place in that precinct somewhere to put a polling place, start from the polling places and then pick our polling places, then build our precincts around it so that nobody lives closer to somebody else's polling place than their own polling place. And that's what I kind of tried to show you. And so does that sound okay that we can at least look and see what it looks like for next week?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so that was my idea. So I can then, if it's okay with y'all, then I'll email Director Sosby asking her to ask Mr. D'Angelo to get that going for us. That was my one item to check in about. So.
I had a couple items. Ms. Long, we had discussed investigating a couple places. Do you have a report on those places?
Yes, I do. We was talking about moving 3A multimodal to the airport, so Lisa did reach back out to the people at the airport. Do you wanna,
I heard Davin Welter is the person at the airport that we talked to. And he is excited about it and happy. I just got an email a few minutes ago from him saying that he's happy about having the precinct come back.
Good, sure.
Okay, then also for, Fire Station 7C, you had suggested St. James Methodist Church first. So I reached out.
5 points.
Said, okay.
Yeah.
So we wanted to see if we could use the St. James Methodist Church. I did reach out to them and their trustees did get back with me. And at this time, they said, they would rather not be involved in any political activities at their church at this time. So with that being said, Hank had suggested the Millage Avenue Baptist Church. So I did reach out to them and actually spoke to their pastor, and they're very excited about us coming over there to their church facility for a precinct place. Okay, and then also, grab my other notes. UGA vet school. we're still trying to get in touch with the manager over there. Lisa and myself both have reached out to her. Neither one have gotten a response from them yet, so we're still waiting to hear from them. And then also you had mentioned one of your community centers, so I did talk to Jack Seaman, the guy who's over that. And he wants to know, if we want to come over and look at the building, and then we can talk about the dates and everything. And he seems like he's excited as well for us
Which one are
to
you
come
from?
from. What is it? Depot. Yeah. And I think those are the only ones that
There was,
we hadn't talked about. And I know we mentioned Hillsman.
there was 6B, the mall.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And I sent an email to Miss Elizabeth, explaining, I haven't heard back from her as yet, so I will follow up and see
Okay.
what their thought is as well.
And then there was 6D consolidating with 5A,
Hey.
Oglethorpe
Mhm.
Elementary. We haven't had any contact with the principal there yet or anything until that was a little bit more finalized.
All right. Can we see like some pictures and stuff of like the Village Baptist Church and like kind of the space and stuff at the work session? I've never been there. Some of these other places we're looking at.
We haven't been there
I'll just
either.
Make a comment,
Okay.
Mr. Radford, the parking is huge.
Oh,
The
wonderful.
buildings are enormous. I've only been to one building, but their hall is huge. How much they're willing to give and work with us sounds like they're excited. So it is, to me, a clear possibility.
And I think if we're working with any church, like I said before, we need to be absolutely clear on what their plans would be if they were needing to hold a funeral or some type of other thing on an election day.
Hank has stated, I think they have like classrooms and
Okay.
other separate facilities that we're not able
Other
to
than
do with
church
any
building.
functions. Yeah, that they would have.
They do.
Can I say something?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Okay.
Hold on. On the vet med school, the more I thought about it, I thought it would be easier if we could talk about this at work session, but staying at the fire station, but just working with the UGA parking people, so all the staff can park over there. Yeah,
At least
And that, we already do that. The staff parks
Oh,
in
we
the
already
UGA
do.
parking lot. So the issue there is really
It's an
not
issue.
parking.
Got it.
Right.
Okay,
It's space inside
Okay.
the building.
that's just the thought I had.
And I think we're gonna try to have a conversation with Vet Med about using their facility and see if there's space there.
Yeah, that was
We
what
got-
we discussed.
Yeah, we're working on that. The issue, with the mall, I know this is kind of, it's gonna be kind of awkward. And I think the same thing would happen, because I think there was mention of Hillsman School as well, which is right beside Gaines School. One of the things I like about Clarke County is the fact that we are small landmass wise. But to an extent, it's gonna be kind of awkward with us identifying polling locations. And I know y'all probably agree with this, because Hillsman will be right next door to Gaines School. But you don't want voters who were going to Hillsman to cross over Gaines School to get to Hillsman. And you don't want the people on the other side who were farther closer to Hillsman to cross over and go to Gaines School. If it makes sense, right? So there would be confusion to me as a voter. If I voted in one of those areas, I would be confused with, do I go to Gaines School or do I go to Hillsman? Because they're so close together. So the same thing goes with the mall. So if you're looking at the Cooperative Extension Office, you're gonna have voters who, because the Cooperative Extension Office is not inside the precinct boundaries. So, and I'm bringing this up because you might want to, like you said, after you identify the locations, what can we do to the lines? So it's a lot of work to do, a lot of work. And let's see, was something else I was gonna mention? I can't think of it right now. It's that one. The mall at Med, airport, we're working on that. We're also talking with transit
Yes.
about having I'm calling it a special shuffle on election day that picks up voters from the share ride that I was not aware of until yesterday comes, and I was like, oh, I pass it every day. Share ride to the airport. So we're working on that, and we're waiting to hear from transit. And I think we're working in advance enough time that it can be worked out. My question was, if they gave us a shuffle, would one of the board members be interested in driving the van on election day? Because they have offered that to us
Is it
before.
like a CDL type situation? Is it one of the big?
Wouldn't a transit driver
Yes, shuttle.
for
No, you don't
liability
have to
and?
have- I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I kind of jumped.
It would just be like a shuttle van.
Okay, okay.
Oh,
It's like a bus, but it's small, like,
Oh,
and they offered that to us one year, I think it was 2022, when we were talking about voters parking somewhere in the vicinity of multimodal, and then they would get in and ride, and they was like, we can't give you a driver, but we'll loan you the van or whatever. And I was like, well, we don't have that, but this just some ideas thrown out, just in case something like that comes up.
We would not be able to visit the precinct.
Exactly.
take an hour shift. I'd be down. I'm interested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am too.
I know how
You two need to talk.
Well,
You two need to talk.
said, we'll talk to Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a minute left on this.
I was gonna say.
That was before the new transit person, yes, it was before the new transit. Let's see, was one more thing, what was the other locations, name them to me right quick again?
Millage Avenue.
Uh-huh,
Other location.
yeah, Mills Avenue, Vetman, Mall, it was.
There was the old fire station 3
on Fire Station.
we had mentioned. I don't know if we've gotten there yet. That was my.
Talking about putting with Oglethorpe, right?
I thought that was current fire station over on
there was.
Oakthorpe and Hawthorne, but I'm talking about the
I know
one.
so many churches. So when I was in Hall County, we used more churches than anything. And of all those years, we never had an issue with funerals, never had an issue. Somehow it just worked out. That might be the direction to go, to lean towards, because there are more issues now with schools. Yeah, and y'all know what we're facing. And we definitely ought to keep some of the comments that were made earlier in mind. Because I don't want nobody messing with our little babies. Anyway.
Go ahead. Last comment, Mr. Sherman.
Maybe my notes were incorrect, but I know that we had begun discussing last Tuesday about old fire station number 3. And just for next Tuesday, I'd be curious to know at our work session, what we have found, if anything, about old fire station number 3.
You know, that's what I'm telling you, wait. Kind of hold on.
Oh, yeah, I told him to kind of wait until we found out about the church, but I think that Millage Church is gonna be perfect.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's Mills Avenue Church, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
Mills Avenue back.
That's covered. Yeah,
Got it.
that's-
Yeah, we don't need to worry. about
Okay, great. Never mind. Thank you.
The board be interested in visiting some of these locations with us?
I
I would love
absolutely
to.
would. Yeah.
We'll
Absolutely.
just have to do like 2 separate field trips.
Yes, so we'll set up a time that we can visit, and we'll keep in mind the electricity, different things like that we'll also have our survey that we conduct on all of our polling locations to make sure they're ADA compliant and the restrooms are available and all that. We'll have all those different factors in. Yes,
Mr. Raffle, may I make I think it's critical. Comment. Thank you. I just want everyone to know, I had recently met with the chair of the Turner County, who had driven up because we were working on an audit. And just something she mentioned, in Turner County, it's a very small county, but they don't use churches because they've had some issues where black folks won't go to white churches and white folks won't go to black churches. Now, luckily, we are in a much more progressive county, but I just wanted to throw that point out that's happening in Georgia. It's not happening here.
Okay.
So I'm okay with churches here, but just to mention.
Ms. Willa has the final word, then we're moving on.
I've been voting since 1970. And us black folks been in 3 white churches over there where I live. So I don't think they're gonna be a problem.
No, not here.
Yeah, I don't even think it's gonna be that because we've been on what's that, Lexington Road. And in at least a couple of those churches, and somewhere else we were at a church, so I don't think that's gonna even be a consideration.
All right.
On people of color. I don't know about anybody else now. Can speak to that.
Well,
I've been to
my
Black
skin
County.
color is the opposite of yours, so I'll go to any church. I'll go anywhere I need to go to vote. All right. All right, we're gonna move on. The next item on the agenda is status of letter to Clark County School District School Board and Superintendent about improving communications between our office and their regarding election logistics. I have moved to table this multiple times, but came through this time. How about that?
Ta-da.
Did the board members get a chance to see it? Did you see it?
I read it.
Okay, we have two copies here and I'll just explain it, then we can discuss it and hopefully find it and move on. So it was suggested to me by a member of the school board that rather than writing a letter outlining, you guys do great, we love working with you on this, we need you to do better at this, this is our concern with that. Instead of just writing this laundry list of items, that it would be better to propose a joint meeting with our board and the school board so that we can have those candid conversations in the room, work out all the logistics, make sure we work together. So that was the idea behind the letter. So that's simply what this letter states. Mr. Secretary, do you have the letter pulled up? Could you just read it so those listening can read it and then we can.
You'll pass me the paper copy?
Oh, yeah.
So
Here, we got you. So, sorry.
It reads, it names the board members and the superintendent, and then Dear Clark County School Board Administration. We write this letter to request a joint meeting with your board and ours, the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections and Voter Registration. It is our hope all board members and appropriate administration attend this meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to have an open discussion on how both parties can work together for the safety and well-being of our Clark County students and our voters' sacred right to cast their vote. As community partners, our cooperation is vital, and we look forward to the opportunity for collaboration and conversation. A successful meeting will give both parties ample time to prepare for the March 2024 primary election. Thank you for your time and participation and appreciation. And then signature lines for the board members and Director Sosby.
And I think I made one small change after I sent it to Pam, so I'm not sure the right version got printed, but on the last sentence of the first paragraph, it says school district students, staff, and the voters. Included the school staff in there. Because I think their safety and everything is important too.
So this version here that's printed in front of us. has
Is
been changed.
incorrect.
Got it. You can update it. Okay.
And yeah. Well, I sent that
We
other.
were working on it at the same time, and I made the corrections we talked about, and I didn't understand. what
Oh,
that
yeah,
final-
I sent the other version, but,
I also, Mayor,
yeah.
I also think that, it's got, Clark County School District kind of different. So if you're gonna invite the board, you certainly, Dr. Hooker needs to be there.
He's on there.
I mean, he needs to be in prominence, Dear Clark County School Board and Administration. It needs to be Dear Clark County School Board and Dr. Hooker, or Dr. Hooker first. I'm
Okay.
telling you, it's a little different.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How about Dear Clark County Superintendent and School Board, and then we'll come to the top of the list. Is that fine?
I missed what you're,
So Dear Clark County School Superintendent. And
I think
school
you
board.
should use that man's name. Out of respect, please use his name.
Because he's at the top.
Well, I mean, he's listed here, and so.
I agree.
Okay. I'm not gonna,
That's all I have.
okay. Yeah, we can make that change. That's fine. Yeah. Any questions, comments? Okay. So I have the draft. I can make that change right here
Okay.
and then send it to Pam. But let's take a vote and then we can. So the chair will entertain a motion to send this letter? Is that an appropriate thing to say, or sign, does it matter?
Send you a letter.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to authorize sending the letter in front of us.
I so move.
Okay. We have a second.
1 second.
Second from Ms. Fambro. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The letter is approved. We'll get you the right version and all that. And may I make one request? I know that we have a couple different letterheads. Can we use the other one that Miss Audrey uses on hers? I think it's just a little cleaner look.
Yeah,
This-
the one that's on it, yeah, the one that's on
Yeah.
our,
I think it just,
minutes.
yeah, it's the one we.
Yeah. If,
Use for open records request.
and just a little OCD like that. It's fine. And then, I guess we can just swing by and put ink on it at the office when we have it. All right, the next item on the agenda is providing Spanish language translation for voter information materials. And we do have 15 minutes allocated to that, and I'm gonna set the timer so we don't go off the rails here. And the chair recognizes Mr. Shirley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we last discussed this in February, it was my understanding that with the way the budget process had gone, we had missed our opportunity to jump in with a budget request as a department. And so I had sort of dropped back and just floated the idea, and I plan to come back when we were ready to send a proposal for the fiscal 25 budget. I'm delighted that I was wrong, and there is potentially a chance still for it to make it into the fiscal 2024 budget. What the idea is that we include some sort of Spanish translation services for our voters. That can take all kinds of forms because we are not required to provide them. So there's not the whole laundry list of things that we must provide, as is the case for Gwinnett County. We could, if we wanted to, choose to do it voluntarily as DeKalb County is doing, in which case we have more latitude in terms of what we do and do not choose to implement. It is my understanding that the budget is still being drafted. It's now, I think, on its way to the mayor's desk or the county commissioners. So if we were willing to, if there were consensus among us, then we could formally ask that they include some money in that budget to help us with a future discussion on how exactly we would like this to look. I didn't want to come to this meeting with the nuts and bolts of what I do want to do and don't want to do. We can go there if y'all want to, but all I wanted to simply do was, like I was talking back in February and January, was if we were to get to that point and want to do something, we would be able to do so knowing we have at least some funding available for this. That's what I wanted to ask about tonight, formally requesting Mayor and County Commission, please set aside some money for us so that if we were to choose to, we have some funding for this. I do not envision this at all adding any extra workload on the staff whatsoever. They work hard enough as it is for the voters. We have been speaking with, I know Chair Raffle and I were speaking with Keisha Smith, who is the Director of Elections in DeKalb County. She walked us through a very detailed presentation on how exactly they implemented their process back in 2020. We don't have to do exactly what they did. I've been speaking to Mr. Manifold, who is the Director of Elections in Gwinnett County, and he walked me through briefly the process they follow where they have to do all these things. I want to find out what's right for us. I don't want to copy either approach. But again, before we even get there, I want to be sure we have some money there so that we're not just wasting our time. We have so many other irons in the fire. I don't want this to be any more wasted time if we're not in agreement that we want to proceed with this. So I'm happy to elaborate on anything that y'all would like to know more about. But what I would like to ask tonight is that if the chair will allow, I would move that we eventually request that the mayor and county commission appropriate an adequate amount of money in the fiscal 2024 budget, Spanish language translation services or materials for voters. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Sure.
So.
The chair recognizes Ms. Fambro, and I think I saw her hand up.
And just for clarity, that would be the budget July 24th through July 25th.
What I'm hoping for is with the reason that I'm coming with this is this would get us in time for this coming July through next June.
Okay.
Versus if we wait, it'll be for the next July until the June 2025.
Okay, so I think I'm sorry, misstated. Actually, I want to say July 23 through July 24.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was asking. I'm
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, I got my dates mixed up. I mean, my years.
And then because the fiscal calendar and the election calendar are not in sync because they're such different things, what's at stake here is if we wait and do the new budget for fiscal 25, that would still give us the chance to provide some services for the general presidential election next November. However, we would not be able to get in there in time for the municipal and primary in May. What's at stake here is whether we can get this in time for our local elections and our primary and our presidential preference primary in March, April, May.
Chair recognizes Ms. Tiller.
I don't remember that we have discussed all of the numbers on this because we've talked about so many things. Have we discussed, do we have facts, numbers about how many people, how many voters in Clarke County need this and what it will cost?
Excellent question. So I do have details on this. From communicating with Director Sosby and Mr. D'Angelo in the Geospatial Information Office, the American Community Survey showed that 19,000 residents in Athens-Clarke County speak a language other than English at home. 15,000 of those residents are eligible to vote. And 6,300 residents of the county reported that they speak English less than very well. That's the wording they use. So I don't have a hard number of exactly how many people are unable to vote without this, but the surveys the statistics that we have looks like at least thousands of voters, it's safe to say, would be the number of voters who would benefit from this, at least. Now, another direction that I'm coming at this to find more numbers is I'm hoping to hear soon from the Clarke County School District about how many families in Clarke County have students and live at home in homes where English is not the first language, because over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, those students will become eligible voters if they're natural, if they are citizens. And so we're going to have more people who currently don't have English proficiency who won't show up in these numbers. They weren't counted in that
You're talking
survey.
about people in school right now. They should be proficient by that time.
Yeah,
right,
when they're
yeah.
ready to vote.
So
I think.
So
Where is that assumption coming from that throughout school, they're not going to be learning any English?
oh, there's let me finish that question.
Yeah,
Good question. No,
let's stay on
this
this
is
till-
exactly what we're here for. This is exactly what we're here for. The second part of your question was the cost. What I have learned from Mr. Manifold, broadly speaking, in Gwinnett County, and they, of course, had to go whole hog. They had to provide everything, BMDs, materials, all the stuff that federal law requires. I understood from the numbers he gave me, it looks like, I believe 110,000 was what they were looking at. Now they have, I want to say 10 times the number of voters we do. It's a big comparison, right? So there's that number. Then DeKalb County, when they got this off the ground with Spanish translation, they spent, I want to say $11,000. So that's a wide range.
So what do you propose? Do you have a number that you're going to?
I prefer to get our foot in the door more with what DeKalb County has started with. I don't want to, and this is like 3 conversations down the line, but what I would like us to talk about, if we are blessed enough to have money set aside for us, is proposing something small, like voter education materials, like a sample ballot, things like that. But again, that's a separate conversation if and only if we agree that we would like to ask for the money to be set aside in the first place.
Thank you.
All right, the chair recognizes Mr. Kadir. I'd remind you that let's keep the questions related to.
We'll try. You say there are 15,000 eligible voters.
Mhm.
Those who speak Spanish in their homes, or
The information the American Community Survey had was that 15,200 residents who speak a language other than English at home.
other than English.
And they use the term limited English proficiency, I think is.
Is it? Okay,
That was the-
okay.
I thought that was the.
Do we-
Not registered voters.
This
Yeah,
is
I'm
the
sorry.
American Community Survey,
The numbers that
kind of like the census.
Mr. D'Angelo shared with me, and I believe I'm quoting correctly, 19,400 residents of Athens-Clarke County in 2021 speak a language other than English at home. 15,200 of those are eligible to vote.
Do we have any numbers on the total number of English-speaking folks who are eligible to vote and have not registered?
English speaking who are eligible and not registered. I don't have that number. I can see how we could calculate if there's an estimate of, right, using some of these numbers, I can get back to you with that.
Yeah, I would like to, because, if you're going to focus on one group, you have to find out why are so many other people not registering to vote.
I agree. Education is a great thing. Registration should be a great thing we do.
Look, as a general rule, I not been supportive of it, but I just want you to know, I really appreciate your effort. And I understand democracy. We have had people trying to overturn democracy on January 6th. We got a legislature trying to overrule people who are elected. I get it. I am with you, and every person should be eligible to. What we don't have, as I see it, is a commission, county commission, who has given us basic guidelines. If they said tomorrow, 1% of your county, whatever number they want to come in, once you have that, we will now implement Spanish speaking. Regardless what I feel, as always, if the board votes on something, even if I don't like it, I will be supportive, and that's how I speak in public. We don't have that yet. We are just coming up with a language, and I really know. Today I was at the Social Security office. I even took a picture, which I wish I could show, about 14 languages they provide interpreters, and I know where we are going, and I'm supportive of it. But just as a board making this effort because it feels good or sounds good, I'm just having a little trouble. If you're going to tell me that, okay, this money that we asked for will go towards education and bringing it, I will support that. But what I do not want to be tricked into is next step saying all that money is going to be making the ballots. If the first step is to, like you said, the 15,000 voters eligible to vote, let's see if we can provide that material education and make them register, then we can discuss ballots way down in the future. So if that's the purpose of your saying, let's make that request, I will support up to that point very specific. But overall, I mean, if you're spending, I mean, because I feel if you do it the way you're doing it, it can be challenged. Someone who speaks Romanian, one person can say, hey, I want it, because you have no guidelines. You've just come up with a number and a language entirely on your own because we know that those numbers exist.
Let's keep the topic related to Mr. Shirley's agenda.
Well,
item.
If I may.
that's it.
Hold on, okay?
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna speak and then speak again. One thing that I learned from our conversation, well, first of all, let me start with Mr. Shirley has done 99% of this work. I joined for one conversation and kind of just wanted to bridge some gaps on some people. But anyway, one thing that I like the way that DeKalb County approached this, and I think that would work for Clarke County, is the $11,000 they spent on a project manager who then brought members of the community together to then, and did you get that email from Keisha? She spelled that out. It was sent at like 3:30 this afternoon. But anyway, they brought members of the community together, also from the Korean community and the Spanish speaking community. And through that work, that project manager organized the materials and ballots and took the feedback from them. And they may have spent a little more on the actual translation. I don't know, but I think that's a good way of approaching and a good use of money is hiring someone or however staff would work that piece out to bring the people together to have conversations about, do they really want this or do they not? Or do they want Mandarin instead of Spanish or whatever? We can bring community people together to have a conversation. So anyway, you mentioned county commissioners asking us to do something. I think we've had this conversation on other topics. The county commission does not tell us what to do, nor do we report to them. So I think that we're an independent body making our own decisions. So, you know, conversations have been had and, you know, there are commissioners too. So we can very much talk to them.
Do you know if DeKalb or other county, did they have a 1%, 2%, some guideline for their Latin speaking, the Spanish speaking?
Hold that thought, if you wouldn't mind. And you're my friend, but I kind of take offense to you saying these are feel-good activities. I don't even think we should be having this conversation. I think this should just be done, to be honest. This is 2023. Why are we having this debate? Half this country is already doing this. So that's the comments I wish to make. I'll leave it at that. think Mr. Shirley had a comment, and then I don't know if anyone else was after that.
I'm very thankful that you brought up the threshold, because you're right. It's been pointed out by several people. I believe Director Sosby was one of the first ones to point out what's the threshold. If we're not careful, people can say, hang on, I speak this other language over here. Where's my translation? So I do support, if we were to get past, again, this first step of requesting some appropriation, some funding, I would very much like to have a data-based quantitative process in place so that we can set a threshold for ourselves above which we will then request more funding for additional translation for any language group that comes to us. Otherwise, I agree, it's too slippery, because if 5 people show up and say, we speak Hindi or we speak Xhosa, then we should have translations. That's something we should navigate if we can get past this first step of, do we think it's worth requesting the funding from the county government? So,
Yeah, the way you have requested money, I'm in support for that.
And again, yeah, that's the ask right now, but I just wanted to say my piece. Anybody else have anything?
I don't think any of us are really mean-spirited, and we don't want to give these people something they understand. We're just hashing out the logistics of numbers and possibilities right now, and we shouldn't act with hostility toward others on the board who don't completely agree with us.
Yes. Me and Mr. Hank have a dinner date later in the week,
Oh,
for the record. So we're buddies. We're not,
We want to go sit at the table and watch.
yeah. As long as you're at the next building,
Sure,
so we don't have
see
a
me
quorum.
after a dinner, then you can ask questions.
Yeah. And that is time. So at this point, the
May I?
chair recognizes the director
Thank you.
for 2 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that I've done a little work of seeing where we go from here if this is implemented. We're talking sample ballots and maybe signage and forms. May I suggest that rather than we spending a lot of money on translating signs and things, why don't we use some of the signs that another county's using, Gwinnett, DeKalb? So not spend the money there. If we're talking about like maybe a one pager, which is what I'm planning to do, is have a one pager that will be given to all registered voters, and it has an information about election day, last day registered vote, these little things. That would need to be translated. So we would spend money translating for that, right? One of the other things that I wanted to bring to your attention is a sample ballot is not as easy as a fix as we think it is. So I reached out to it used to be CES, but it's now VNEDS. So yeah, the voter and elections data something system maybe, part of the Secretary of State's office, right? They're the ones who build our ballots. I wanted to find out specifically what will we need to do. And this is what was brought to me. A secondary language has to be added and enabled to the election project itself to produce a sample. The county will be required to provide translated ballot text from English to Spanish to our election coordinator. And this is not an automated process. It is a very manual build process, okay? If we're talking about a project person that you mentioned, I would need that project person to come in with me when I'm proving ballots, because I don't know Spanish, right? Also, if Clarke County has a specific question on the ballot, then translation of that ballot question would need to be done by us.
Right.
And so with your conversation with Gwinnett, I don't know if they mentioned this, but how they construct their dual language ballots. And I know ballots is another topic than a sample, because then there's also printing charges that we would have to acquire. Right. So I just wanted to let y'all know that. So my vision is when I do my billboards, you know, the billboards down and below will be in Spanish as well. So just little things like that. I just want to bring your attention. Yes, I would, if we're gonna do something, I think it does need to be in this budget. Because because my hope is that, and this is part of my goals, is that we have this implemented so well by the November election. So in other words, we're gonna put it out there in May. But we want to have it ready. They got their ballots. We have our one pager, we have everything. It's ready for November. So what that timeline looks like, I guess I'll make another timeline for that. Adam and I could do that. And we'll just go from there. I'm just surprised that we're doing it because I know some other counties that are higher numbers in Spanish speaking community and they're not talking about it anymore. So bold move for us. And
It's Clark County, baby.
it is. And so I would enjoy standing up and
Yeah.
saying that we're the third county, but we didn't have to do it, we just did it.
Yeah, and again, I'm really in support of having someone, whether it's one of your existing staff, but my question is for you, manager. But Manager Jones, are you? Hi, I have a question for you. Could you get with HR and report back next time what would be the process of like a project manager if we could convince the director to go that route?
Project manager, HR.
Did you manage, you probably were working over there and missed the.
No, I heard that.
So real short, DeKalb County hired a project manager to execute this language project. Could you report back next time or via email, what the process would be, how much time it would take? What if HR would need to do X, Y, Z in order to do that?
My confusion here is, are you asking for a position?
No, that's not what they did. They hired a contractor to do that job.
Which will come through the budget.
And forgive us, Mr. Jones, again, this is where we're getting kind of messed up. If I want to go all into the details, what DeKalb County did, which was kind of inspirational for us, is to keep the burden as little as possible on existing staff. They had an outside contractor that they hired, that they termed a project manager. And so I think.
And that's what their appropriations from their city or county commission mostly funded.
Do y'all have the scope of work for this consultant?
That's something that I'll reach out.
But I think that's
You would need that.
the next
Okay.
part of the conversation.
We would need a scope of work. We would have, so this wouldn't be HR, this would be a procurement thing. So we would have to go procure this contractor.
Right.
Yeah.
So scope of work, RFP, enter into a contract.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm working through a contract RFP process, mapping systems.
Okay.
Lean Six Sigma thing, right? So I can tell you what's a good time frame on that. If we're doing really well, is 165 days.
So, yeah, that's just another
Excellent to know.
piece of
Yep.
that.
Excellent.
And at this point, I think we're going to close discussion. And the chair will entertain a motion, or actually, if the secretary would just like to make it, or another member. The floor is open.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we request the mayor and county commission include in the fiscal year 2024 budget amount for the purpose of providing Spanish language materials for voters.
What is the adequate amount?
So we weren't sure if the number needed to be something that they fleshed out, or if that's something better for us to flesh out here.
Totally about the scope of work. So, using Gwinnett's scope of work and, right, so I couldn't tell you what that person would call it.
I got you. So they deal more, it would be better for their process to have a concrete number they're being asked versus.
Yes.
Okay.
And well, candidly, we're a little late in the process. Budget has not been approved.
The budget is still at the mayor's.
Still in the works. That's right. Exactly. But it's left Manager Williams' hands to the mayor.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I guess I would, well, actually, we need to have a second before we can have a discussion. So I'll second that. The motion was made by Mr. Shirley. I'll go ahead and second that. I would just say, and going back to a comment I made earlier and a comment that's made previous, two separate bodies, I think the mayor making that decision is probably best, but I could like throw a number out and just
Right.
spitballing.
I'm not sure. What do y'all think? It's,
I would recommend a recommendation from this body. I think that would be helpful. If Chairman Raffle wanted to go speak to the mayor, you certainly have that right. But if I'm the mayor, I'm going to want to know the number to put into the budget. And then if you give me a number, I'm going to want to know that you got it from a legitimate source.
Could you all ask DeKalb County for a copy of what this particular person did for $11,000 to give you just some kind of guideline?
Mhm.
Because we, they probably have what, 2, 3, maybe a couple of more, as many voters than we have.
Millions more.
Yeah.
Like a million more.
DeKalb, Fulton, they got,
Don't they
got
have
people-
like
people-
2 million?
I don't know.
so,
Okay.
and it might be some things on there that we're not intending to do.
Right.
Because of our size.
Mhm.
So if we could get a copy of what they did, then we can kind of have some kind of idea about, what is in there for us to look at. And we may be able to scratch some stuff off.
So I find out what their scope of work, I guess, to try and use that terminology is,
Yeah.
what was their scope of work for their procurement
For that,
process?
for that
Okay.
amount of money.
The only thing I'm concerned about is I know that the mayor still has the budget and we may overlap the process, so we may need to have a special called meeting next week if we're not going to vote on this now. Ms. Till, go ahead.
Did I miss the idea that what this project manager, the $11,000, is that just his salary? Does that include the printing and all this other stuff? What's the package deal for this
We had-
11,000?
I believe,
Let Mr. Shirley answer.
so I believe from what Ms. Smith was telling us, what the route, the path they chose to take, DeKalb County chose to take in 2020, I believe this was. They contracted out, I believe it was more of a subcontract, their public relations office subcontracted to somebody else, and they appropriated that $11,000 to that person who took care of all of that.
The contractor subcontracted the translation out is what happened.
Contractors subcontracted.
That is what the DeKalb director told us. So they hired the contractor and entered into an agreement. The contractor delivered the product via subcontract. I mean, if I was
So I think the point for our purposes, the point would be, I believe they spoke, they said, here's the budget we have for you. Please get for us these things, the scope of work. And then that was the budget they had to work within. So that covered their fee, their contract fee, whatever, and the finished product. So that's my understanding.
So ultimately, we still need to put eyes on what the actual costs were for them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For that year, they told us it was $11,000 was the contract, and that got them the 2020 election ballots prepared, the information material prepared in Spanish.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Would we like, what do you, hearing the wisdom from someone who lives this, do we want to leave it a general number and ask and just communicate with the mayor's office later about the firm number, or do we spell the number out?
I mean,
I don't
we
know
can
enough
put
about
whatever
this.
word we want in there. So if we want to go back to adequate, that is certainly something this body can do. And then perhaps you have most of the data, perhaps you could call the mayor and flesh out a better number. Or we could have a special meeting again and insert the number into it.
I'd be happy to.
What's
What's the feeling of?
I'd be just waiting till the next one is to,
I have a question. So you all are saying that the budget is now on the mayor's desk, and this is for July, July 23 through July the 2024.
yeah, so, the motion included the word adequate.
Mhm.
So, the chair will call a vote on that. And if it fails, we can go back. We only have 4 people, so
Did Mr. Clear have to leave? I believe he said he had to leave.
yeah, he had an appointment with a friend or something.
Okay.
Okay, my understanding is, Mr. Jones is telling us that we need to plug in 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 before we give it to the mayor. He's not gonna just sign a check and give it to us.
That's his recommendation, right? That's what it's
So
from his part
the
of the process.
discussion that I'm hearing back and forth here is the word adequate. Is that in place of a actual figure?
That was, and that would mean then leave it for, in this case, the mayor or the county commission down the line to interpret what the word adequate means.
Okay.
And see, the number that we were given, that when DeKalb County went through this, that was back in 2020. And so I don't know, if most groceries have gotten more expensive in the past 3 years. I don't know what their fee might be. So I don't know if 15,000 would be a safe number.
That is literally what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, would you accept an amendment to
I would.
15,000? I think your point of inflation, and I think that's a fair overestimate, given that DeKalb County has millions of people and we have hundreds of people.
I would suggest we just plug in 15,000, and if we get this passed, the contractor and the subcontractor figure out what they can do for $15,000. You want to start, I think, the figure that we're presenting
Okay, so-
to the mayor and not just a signed check is a place to start.
All right,
Sounds good.
so we have a motion.
I've amended my motion.
Okay.
I would like to move with the substitute. I request that we request the mayor and county commission include in the fiscal year 2024 budget for the Department of Elections and Voter Registration an amount of $15,000 for the purpose of providing Spanish language materials for voters.
Okay, and as a seconder, I accept that amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Request will be made. Mayor and commission.
And so if it's okay with Mr. Chair, would you like me to be the one to draft the email to the mayor's office with this request?
Yeah.
And then
Everyone else okay, or would you?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I don't want
Would
to.
you? Okay, would you copy us, which I knew you would do anyway?
absolutely will.
Good. All right, next item on the agenda is new business, of which there is none, so we will move on. The next item on the agenda are announcements. The Board of Elections has another work session to discuss voter precincts on Tuesday, April 18th. That'll be held at 3 p.m. and will be at the Lexington Road location, which is 2555 Lexington Road. The next meeting will be our regular meeting in May, Tuesday, May 9th at 4:30 p.m. at this location, which is 120 West Doherty Street. And if there are no further questions or comments, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.